If sequestration wasn't enough to deal with, nationwide base closures could also hurt us. Cavante Smalls reports on the base realignment and closure program and how local businesses are reacting.
Just blocks away from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is the Birdcage Consignment Shop in downtown Fairborn. Ron Payne has run the shop, which sells a little of everything for the last 5 years.
I just enjoy doing it, and hopefully will continue.
He says many of his customers come from the base and can't imagine how more cuts on top of the sequester will impact the area. Community leaders gathered to try to stay a step ahead of the base realignment and closure, or BRAC. BRAC closed several military bases throughout the country in 2005 to save the government money. Back then, Wright-Patt came out relatively unscathed.
Now, over 1,200 missions, people were brought to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Springfield, construction over $300 million, and it really solidified Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for a base moving forward.
2015 could be the next time we see BRAC closures, and while Wright-Patt isn't expected to close down, there could be more cuts.
If we lose 5 or 10%, I mean, that's thousands of jobs and it's millions of dollars to the region and to the state of Ohio.
That's not good news for local businesses like Ron's Consignment Shop, who rely on the base for most of his customers. But he's doing the best he can, which is to prepare and remain optimistic.
I just hope things stay on the up and up, and we'll just have to adjust if things happen, and hopefully continue on.
In Fairborn, Cavante Smalls, ABC 22 News.
Community leaders tell us they plan to work closely with congressional leaders and the Air Force to best deal with BRAC and its potential impact on the Miami Valley.
All right, so as you could see, there's not only a foreign policy incentive in order to maintain the military and military bases at certain levels. There are also these domestic incentives. Military bases mean jobs, mean money, mean resources for local communities. And so Congress also has to answer to their constituencies, and members of Congress don't tend to like it when the decisions of the federal government result in direct losses of jobs and resources for their congressional districts. And so members of Congress not only engage in the formal aspects of foreign policy that I just talked about, but also these indirect influences on foreign policy by encouraging the military to keep military bases open, even if they are strategically not necessary. Now, all of these aspects of foreign policy that I just discussed involve multiple players, multiple actors, all that have competing incentives. Remember my lecture from the presidency and my lectures from Congress. They are all dealing with a different set of incentives, different set of resources, and different experiences. And because of this, there are many apparent contradictions in U.S. foreign policy. We will maintain friendly relations with one country, but be hostile either in our rhetoric or in our economic behavior with another country that seems remarkably similar to a country that we're friends with. Well, it's because we're often constrained by practical considerations. Sometimes our interests make it so that it is more convenient to ally with a nation that perhaps we don't agree with in terms of their system of government or their economic structures. And these incentives can be both domestic and international. Our allies might benefit greatly from the continued success of a nation that we don't necessarily like in terms of the way they treat its citizens or the way the country handles political power. And it's because of these multiple players, both domestically and internationally, it's resulted in very inconsistent foreign policy. Now, the thing about foreign policy, it's very difficult to predict in terms of where things will go. So as of right now, the only thing I can tell you is that because of these various actors, foreign policy is often complex. And though, like I said, in the bureaucratic and administrative state, there are career officials that specialize in the politics of various countries, the incentives of the elective branches don't necessarily correspond with those whose expertise are in these matters. And so sometimes it can result in a foreign policy uh, that relies solely on the practical conveniences of the nation rather than long-term strategy. And so those are the major takeaways from this lecture on foreign policy. And that is the last lecture for Introduction to American Politics. As usual, you can feel free to email me about this or anything else in the class. And until next time.